This beef didn't happen in a vacuum. The Harris family was already carrying public scrutiny before King said a single word. Legal headlines, past controversies. A family brand that had been under a microscope more than once in recent years. And 50 Cent, someone who has spent 2 decades turning other people's vulnerabilities into leverage, knew exactly what he was walking into when he posted that photo. That's what makes this situation different from a standard rap beef. Most feuds are about 2 people on equal footing trading shots. This one involves someone who had studied the terrain before the first move was made. And once you understand that context, every step of this escalation looks less like chaos and more like architecture. To understand how it got here, you have to start with the spark, and how fast a Versus disagreement turned into something that had nothing to do with music. I went public earlier this year, claiming he and 50 had privately discussed a hit-for-hit battle. According to Tip, the plan was straightforward. He would announce it publicly, 50 would confirm, and the culture would get the heavyweight catalog showdown it had been waiting for. When T.I. did his part, 50 acted like the conversation never happened. For T.I., that wasn't a scheduling issue, it was a character issue. He went on record saying he no longer respected 50. And in hip-hop, that word between veterans is a declaration, not a complaint. 50 didn't clarify. He didn't accept or decline the battle properly. He went straight to Instagram and attacked credibility. Old footage resurfaced. The phrase "King Rat" landed in the comments. T's title, King of the South, a name his son literally carries, got twisted into an accusation. Snitch allegations flew both directions. In one afternoon, a catalog celebration became a reputation war. Still between 2 grown men, still technically contained. Then 50 made the move that changed everything. He posted an unflattering photo of Tamika "Tiny" Harris, a woman who had said nothing publicly about any of this, and captioned it with a warning for T.I. to keep his name out of his mouth. Then he deleted it. But by the time it disappeared, it had already done everything it needed to do. Every major hip-hop blog had the screenshot. It was in group chats, on Twitter, across TikTok. The image was living independently of his page, being shared by accounts with no connection to him. He removed the original, while the content continued spreading without him needing to say another word. That's the move. Post, let it breathe, delete. The bomb explodes and you walk away from the blast site, and it produced exactly the reaction it was designed to produce. King Harris saw his mother trending for mockery in front of millions of people and went live immediately. No delay, no strategy, just raw emotion. He fired directly at 50. Then he went to the place that made the entire internet pause. He posted what appeared to be an image of Sabrina Jackson's headstone, told 50 to dig her up, said it more than once. Sabrina Jackson was 15 when she had Curtis. She raised him alone in South Jamaica, Queens, through some of the most dangerous years that neighborhood ever saw. In 1983, when Curtis was 8 years old, she died in a fire authorities believed was no accident, that she may have been drugged before gas was left running in the apartment. No arrests, no conviction. The case was never solved. 50 has spoken about it for decades. He said he didn't understand death at 8, that he kept waiting for her to come home. He's described how that loss sent him into the streets by 12, how every setback since has felt heavier because of it. That trauma isn't background information. It's the foundation of who he became. When King posted that headstone, he wasn't responding to a troll. He was pressing on the deepest wound in 50's origin story. A murdered mother, an unsolved case, a childhood shaped by unresolved grief, in front of millions of people. The timeline went quiet in a way it usually doesn't, because there's aggressive trash talk, and then there's pointing at where a murdered parent is buried. Everyone waited for 50 to match that intensity. He posted a meme, Pepe the Frog. Caption, LOL. No emotional response, no acknowledgement of the grave image. Just a cartoon and 3 letters. That response wasn't indifference, it was positioning. He's run the same play for over 2 decades. Against Ja Rule, against Rick Ross, against Floyd Mayweather. When the other side goes emotional, he goes cold. The person reacting looks unstable. The person laughing looks in control. By posting LOL after a grave image, he shifted the narrative from 50 crossed a line with Tiny to did King go too far? The original provocation, the photo that no longer technically existed on his page, faded. The emotional reaction became the headline. This is also where King's history with exactly this kind of situation becomes relevant. Back in 2023, during an Atlanta Falcons game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, King went live on Instagram, and the situation between him and T, I turned physical. King was claiming street credibility. T.I. told him he was embarrassing himself and the family. Moments later, there was a headlock, shoving, Tiny stepping in to separate them. Millions watched it happen. That clip never disappeared. It just waited, and it established a pattern that was already on record before this beef started. King reacts emotionally in public. T.I. steps in to contain the damage. It's happened before, and now it was happening again. Except this time the person on the receiving end wasn't a family dispute at a football game. It was one of the most experienced psychological operators in hip-hop history. Now here's where the risk stacking comes in. The Harris family entered this situation already carrying weight. Legal scrutiny, past public controversies, a family brand that has been under a microscope more than once. In 2024, King himself was arrested in Georgia after authorities discovered an open warrant tied to a case involving speeding and driving with a suspended license, a story that faded at the time but never fully went away. None of these things individually would matter much in a normal beef, but this isn't a normal beef. 50 Cent doesn't need to attack you directly. He highlights something once and lets the internet do the excavation. He reposts a clip. He drops a subtle reference. He likes a comment. And suddenly, thousands of accounts start connecting every dot they can find. Old articles, old charges, old controversy, old footage, and the narrative builds itself. When King's outburst went viral, it didn't just generate headlines about this specific moment. It opened a search bar on his entire history. People weren't just debating whether he crossed a line by mentioning Sabrina Jackson. They were replaying the Falcons incident. They were finding the 2024 arrest. They were pulling up every moment where King's image didn't match the street narrative he'd been building. And in a fight against someone who specializes in keeping those conversations alive, that accumulation is dangerous. T.I. understands this. He's been in this industry for over 20 years. He's survived federal charges, public controversies, and multiple cycles of scrutiny. He knows how narratives compound. He knows that when you're already carrying past headlines, every new viral moment doesn't just create its own story. It refreshes every story that came before it, which is why the question people started asking wasn't just whether King crossed a line, it was whether T.I. had to step in behind the scenes and shut it down before it went further. The Falcons incident showed the pattern. King reacts, T.I. contains. The difference now is the stakes. A headlock at a stadium is a family moment that goes viral. A grave post in a war with 50 Cent is leverage that doesn't expire. T.I. responded publicly the way veterans do. He went to the booth. He previewed a diss track called War, pointed and personal, referencing paperwork and questioning credibility. He rolled it to Atlanta radio before streaming, which felt intentional. One side was making music, the other was making memes. That contrast was sharp, but the blogs weren't covering the bars. They were covering the tombstone images and the frog emoji. In internet beef, whoever controls the visual narrative usually wins public perception regardless of who wins lyrically. And 50 had controlled every visual in this situation from the beginning. The unflattering tiny photo, his frame, his caption, his timing on deletion, the Pepe meme, his tone, his positioning, his response. Every image the public associated with this situation came from his account, or was a reaction to his account. T.I. and King were responding to his frames. He wasn't responding to theirs. That asymmetry is the whole story. One side carried the emotional weight of this situation publicly, loudly, and in ways that will follow them into every future search result. The other side posted content, removed it, and responded to a grave photo with a cartoon. When someone who plays the long game responds to a murdered parent's headstone with LOL, that isn't the end of anything. That's the setup. And the Harris family, carrying existing scrutiny, a documented pattern of emotional public reactions, and a young member who just handed a 20-year veteran exactly the kind of material he knows how to use, is now waiting to find out what gets built from it. Because 50 doesn't forget, and he doesn't rush. He just waits until the moment is right.